Government is open.
That's right.
Okay, longest shutdown in history. Can you tell me what the point of all that was?
I wish that I knew, Sean, because here's what the Democrats actually accomplished. They caused a lot of stress for our troops. They made our air traffic controllers not get paid. They caused a lot of flight cancellations. They had a lot of people thinking they weren't going to get their food benefits, all for literally nothing, Sean, because we could have struck this exact deal 45 days ago. In fact, we met with Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and said, we will pass this exact deal. They said no. They put the American people through a ton of pain and suffering for nothing. And we knew this was going to happen, Sean. We knew the President of the United States said every single day, eventually the Democrats are going to realize this is an absurd position. We've got to reopen the government. And that's what they did.
US President Donald Trump has signed a bill to end the longest government shutdown in the country's history. 8 Democrats sided with the Republicans to pass the bill, ending a 43-day lapse that saw federal workers go without pay and travellers become stranded at airports.
The longest government shutdown in American history now over after 43 days and a bitter feuding between the two parties and painful consequences for the American public that were just piling up by the day. That is now over. The bill passed the House on Wednesday evening. The vote was 222 to 209. That vote came as a result of 6 Democrats voting with all but 2 Republicans, those Democrats coming mostly from swing districts, breaking with their party leaders who are trying to push them to vote against this bill because of their concerns that the final product did not include an extension of expiring subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. It was that fight, that demand by Democrats that ultimately led to this prolonged shutdown fight. Democrats were concerned that if those subsidies were not extended immediately, people would see their premiums skyrocket. The 22 million people or so who do get their health insurance through Obamacare would be hit hard by those premium increases. And they insisted that any funding bill must be tied to an extension of those health care increases. Well, that did not happen. In fact, at the end of the day, a deal was cut by the Senate on Sunday night that would not include the health care provisions in that bill. It was now a separate commitment that they got from the Senate Majority Leader to have a vote on a separate bill on health care at a later date. The question is going to be what will ultimately happen with that bill. It's unlikely to pass the Senate and is unlikely to even get a vote in the United States House. Meantime, those Democrats who voted yes are explaining their position and why they broke from their party, including Congressman Don Davis, who comes from a swing district in North Carolina. I caught up with them in the immediate aftermath of the vote.
But you could have dug in, and you could have fought to include this in the bill.
And I could have reopened the government because a lot of people are hurting right now. And that's what I did.
Was the shutdown worth it?
Was it worth it? Again, I'll put it this way. You have to start the process by trying. You have to allow an opportunity to talk and allow the negotiations to take its place. I mean, did I want more? Absolutely, I wanted to see more. I would love for us to prepare for the holidays and know that people, their minds are at ease.
But this bill only keeps the government open, a fair amount of the federal government, through January 30th, which means that there'll be another fight that will intensify almost right away, beginning in December, over the issue of health care. It could lead into the new year, and it could prompt another shutdown fear by early next year. But at the moment, federal employees breathing a sigh of relief, the ones who can now get paychecks in the aftermath of this feud, where they were not getting paychecks. Many hundreds of thousands were furloughed, people not getting federal food aid. Now that coming to an end in the aftermath of this bitter feud leading to a law reopening the government.
The president is incredible at that compartmentalization. I think that's one of the reasons why he can handle 10 different problems at once, is because he's able to troubleshoot and then move on to the next thing, troubleshoot and move on to the next thing. The second thing that I've learned from the president, Sean, and I've tried to absorb it as much as I can, and I think some of this is just who he is and his natural instincts, is he has better instincts about human beings than anybody that I've ever met.
Much interest other than kind of the salacious New York Post page 6 readers to the American people. So if he can stick to the issues, I think he's a good shape here.
Let's talk about the government shutdown that's finally coming to an end. And here's Ana Navarro on CNN making some pretty wild claims about the Democrats and then getting fact-checked by Scott Jennings. Look at this.
I know a lot of Republicans. I know a lot of Democrats. They're cut from different cloths. Democrats simply don't have the cold-heartedness necessary to see people suffering and just say, let them eat cake.
Yeah, but
they are not the types that
they
voted
repeatedly to do it. I mean, you just heard Democrats
and what was Donald Trump doing in the meantime?
He doesn't have a vote in the legislature.
No, he's the president of the United States, the most powerful president with Republicans in my lifetime, Scott. He never once even told them, come back to Washington.
We just played
Democrat. You guys have been out of Washington for a month and a half.
Correct.
A month and a half.
We just played Democrat after Democrat admit that the Democratic plan to prolong the shutdown was causing, quote, suffering. That was their words, not mine. Democrats themselves realized the tactic of suffering was no longer something they could personally stomach. That was their party, not Republicans.
Alex, how damaging is this for the Democrats when they clearly prolonged the shutdown? I mean, they could have ended it weeks ago.
I would be so frustrated as a Democrat this week because they came off of an excellent week, maybe one of the best weeks for the Democratic Party in ages. With the aftermath of the elections, they had the wind at their back, and then the manner in which this shutdown ended just completely arrested it. And the past 36 hours have been awful for Democrats. I don't think, to Ana Navarro's point, any American cares if Mike Johnson kept the House of Representatives out of session. That is inside baseball. Nobody cares outside of Washington, D.C. Nobody cares in Washington. But the shutdown did hurt both parties. And I think this is a rare news cycle this past maybe week and a half where nobody looked good. I don't think the Democratic Party looks good having prolonged the shutdown. I don't think that the Republican Party had a great week and a half either. And at this point, I think the bases of both parties are pretty upset, particularly the young people in each party that don't know what this was all for.
Josh, what's your assessment of it all?
Well, I think that Democrats unequivocally lost the shutdown. I'm not entirely sure that Republicans won. There's not necessarily a tremendous conservative policy victory here. On the contrary, the fact that there are all these federal workers who Russ Vought, the director of the White House Office of Management Budget, he's been in charge of the triage operation, trying to temporarily furlough or indeed outright fire federal workers. The fact that Republicans agreed to essentially hire all these fire workers back and give them back pay, well, you know, as someone who thinks that there's probably one, two, or three too many deep state bureaucrats in Washington, I would have liked to have seen a lot of these guys just go get a nice job in the private sector and not mooch off of the taxpayer. So I'm not necessarily thrilled about that. But the Democrats unequivocally lost this. So Alex's point there, they shut down the federal government for the longest time in United States history, 43 days and counting, unless it ends right now, which it looks like it probably is. But this was a long shutdown. And what did they gain? Like, literally, what can they say about it? They can claim absolutely positively nothing. They allegedly, ostensibly were fighting for these expiring Obamacare subsidies. By the way, they did a really lousy job of messaging that. I think most people were deeply confused as to why exactly the government was shut down. They didn't have a clear and compelling reason or rationale. It was spiking healthcare subsidies in primarily blue state, Democrat-run states, so it was self-serving and cynical at that. Essentially, Chuck Schumer, my read on this is that Chuck Schumer really shut down the government for 43 days and counting because he was trying to ward off an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez primary challenge in his upcoming U.S. Senate reelection. The irony of ironies here is that he looks so stupid for caving without having gotten anything whatsoever, is that if anything, he now probably looks worse in the very eyes of those New York State Senate primary voters than he did before all this. So no one gained anything whatsoever, but hey, at least the flights will be back on time, God willing, before our Thanksgiving holiday here in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Look, it's been just over a year since Donald Trump won the election, and looking at what Donald Trump has been able to achieve in that incredibly short time since January 20, it's been phenomenal. I mean, it cannot be overstated how much he's been able to achieve around the world, peace deal after peace deal, and he's done an incredible job. But as you both kind of alluded to, it seems as though he may have dropped his focus when it comes to the economy, because that is what Americans certainly care